Welcome to Path to Alignment with Hungry Yogi. My name is Nataly, your host. I'm a trauma-informed life alignment coach, yoga teacher, and retreat facilitator. If you made it here, you are ready to awaken parts of your soul that have been waiting to be unleashed. We will cover any and all aspects of the human experience. We get open and vulnerable about life and cover the shadows of life as well as the light. I'm so grateful that your soul found its way here. And if you would like to go deeper into your personal development journey, book a free 30-minute alignment call with me to learn about having me as your personal life coach. All the links to learn about my offerings are in the description. Without further ado, let's get aligned. Hello, welcome to Path to Alignment. We are live with a camera now in my little impromptu studio. And I'm just so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be back. And I'm so happy to be joining you guys from the comfort of my little living room. And I'm inviting you to my space right now to tune into this episode. And this has been a long time coming for me. I started the podcast maybe like a year and a half ago. And from the very beginning of when I started it, the ultimate vision was to have video recordings. But at the time, I didn't want that to stop me from just getting my word out there, from getting myself out there and putting myself in an uncomfortable position, because this is essentially what it is. Like when you put yourself in these spaces, it's quite uncomfortable. It's something that takes you out of your comfort zone, to say the least. And okay, as we're getting started, first of all, I just want to let y'all know, this is like, it makes me nervous. And I've been setting up the lighting and all these different things. And I was like, oh my God, there's a shadow here. Oh my gosh, there's a cord here. And there was so many reasons that I wasn't allowing myself to just sit down and start. And I got to the point where I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to start recording and whatever, like eventually we'll work with the lighting and we'll get a cool plant to cover this up and all that. And if you're just tuning in from Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you're just listening to the audio, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's okay. You can tune in on YouTube when this launches, and I'm really excited for it. So just join me from wherever you are, whether you're in your car or in your home or at work or wherever. And this is going to be a new edition of Path to Alignment, because now you actually get to see me, the person who's speaking to you, and we get to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more direct, and it can feel more like you're talking to a friend. So I'm very happy to have you here. I'm joining you today with my favorite mug. So if you're tuning in from the camera, can you just take a moment to look at this mug? It's literally the coolest thing ever. I'm obsessed. It's from Mexico, from Oaxaca, and I'm drinking some matcha. It's so good. So let's get started. I don't have a specific topic that I want to talk about today. I just wanted to get myself out here and start and just get it going and just kind of get past this blockage that I've been having for a few months now. If you're someone who listens to the podcast adamantly, you know that I haven't really launched an episode in a few months, or when I was launching, it was kind of every now and then. And I realized what I needed was to give myself an actual break. Like I needed to put the brakes on the podcast and just kind of reset, because there was so many different things that I was trying to do. And I think sometimes whenever we set a goal for ourselves of like something we want to do, we give ourselves timelines that are so tight and so almost like unrealistic. And we forget that we're human and we're not robots. We're not machines. We're not meant to be in go, go, go mode all the time. So in the past year, there's been so many different things that I've implemented. Like when I started the podcast, it was at a time when I was graduating from college. So I was finishing my degree at the time, deciding that that's not what I wanted to do, going full-time into life coaching. And it was life coaching and the podcast, right? That was like my main two focuses. Since then, so many things have evolved and so much has happened, and I've grown in so many different aspects of my life. I've since then began throwing my own events. So if you live in Houston and you've been to any of my events, they're called Matcha Mama Yoga. And oh my gosh, these events have been my heart and soul. They've been everything to me. And I have realized that since I started the events, a lot of things have shifted as far as like where I'm able to place my energy. And the expectations that I had, quote unquote expectations for myself on like what I was able to do, how I was going to perform, I really had to let those go in many aspects, because whenever you put something new on your plate, you have to take into account that you must give yourself space to recover. You must give yourself space for life, because life keeps on lifing no matter what. Like, you can put on all the tasks, all the goals, life is not going to stop lifing. And what I mean by that is family is still going to be there. You're still going to, have to make space for family or friends or free time. There's certain unexpected events that happen in families' lives, and that you, maybe if you're really invested in family, show up for, right? There's things at work that maybe take more time than you would have thought. There's just so many unexpected things that happen in the day. And at one point in my life, I was so adamant about following my calendar, like that if this was on my calendar, it had to get done in that portion of time. And then I had something else on the calendar right after, where it's like, okay, this go to the gym, work from 12 to 1 p.m., from 1 to 2 eat, from 2 to 2:30 shower. And it's like, that doesn't leave any space for like, hey, what if mom or dad calls you? What if you talk on the phone with your grandpa for an hour and then all of a sudden your schedule is all messed up? Then what happens there is then we start to get into like this loop, this negative feedback loop of talking down on ourselves for not accomplishing the thing that we put on our calendar. So my relationship to my calendar has really evolved since that period of my life. And I'm still trying to figure out a lot of what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So I'm going to be totally raw with you. I am still figuring out a lot. Like, life is such a beautiful and mysterious thing. And to think that there's one single person out there that has all the answers is so just like unrealistic. It's unrealistic. So I'm actually going to tell you a reason why I've been feeling blocked the past couple of months. And one big part of it has been pressure that I've been putting on myself to speak, and like to speak the right words. Like, what are people going to want to hear? Well, what if I don't know enough about that topic? What if I sound dumb? Like, there's all these limiting thoughts that go through my head, just like anybody else, right? And I think especially when you put yourself in a place where there are lots of people listening, like there's people that listen to this podcast that I didn't even know listen to the podcast. Like, you never know who's actually listening until, for example, I go to like a drum circle or a yoga class and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh my gosh, I love your podcast. I listened to the last episode." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't even know you listened to my podcast." When I first started recording these episodes, I really didn't think anybody would listen. I thought maybe a few people would tune in, but then it started becoming something where more and more people were actually tuning in. And it was really exciting. And at the same time, it started to create nerves inside of me, because a limiting belief about myself that has been running through my head for, I mean, since I can remember, but I think it's amplified more and more since I've stepped into this role of life coach, of yoga teacher, of like being in a teacher role where I'm having to use my voice a lot and express my heart and my soul and like put myself out there more. The limiting belief that's been looping through my mind is, who are you? Like, who are you to think that you can tell this person that this is what they should do if they have trauma, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of these thoughts, right? And then I have my higher self that kind of walks into the room and says, imagine you 10 years ago. You would have loved to hear what you're telling somebody now. Because the knowledge and wisdom that I've developed over the past few years, and of course, like over a lifetime, it's something that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if my higher self had come to my teenage self, my younger self, and said, like, look, this and this and this, like there's things that happen in your childhood that are really going to impact you. Right now, the reason you're numbing is because you're trying to shut out the fact that your dad was a horrible person that had so much trauma. The reason you're doing all these drugs is because you feel like you don't fit in. So this is the only way that you think you're going to fit in, because you feel like if you don't do these things, nobody's going to accept you. And you feel like high school is never going to end. You feel like the people that are in your life right now are going to be in your life forever, but they're not. Like, had this version of me gone to that version of me at that time, I can't imagine how different my life would have been. At the same time, I wouldn't change a single thing about any of what I did. Like, yes, it was painful. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you haven't really heard much of my story, I have a few episodes where I talk about it. But just to give you like a brief overview, like super quick overview of kind of my life and some of my traumas that I've really had to work through and that are still a part of me. I grew up in Colombia, South America. My biological father was a narco. He was a drug trafficker. He was in and out of jail multiple times when I was little. My mom was a teenage mom. So I was raised by her and by the help of my grandparents. God bless them. I love them so much. We grew up very poor, and by the time I was 6, my amazing angelical stepfather jumped in and rescued all of us and took us out of the ghetto, literally, in Colombia, took us to a really nice area. I was able to go to a better school. Then from there, I moved to America. So I lived in America from the age of 8 years old until now. I'm 28. And through my time in America, it was very traumatic to begin with, just because I came into a whole nother country. And I know a lot of you guys listening probably have had similar experiences where you've moved from one place to the other or multiple times, or you're from a whole nother country and then had culture shock moving. So if that's ever happened to you, like, I totally feel you, because it's not easy to come from another country and to try to find your identity in a whole new country. Identities are very different from country to country. At the same time, very similar, but there's a lot of different customs that are very hard to adjust to whenever you come, especially as a child. So we moved a lot, probably every 1 to 2 years. We would move from one state to the other, one city to the other. We ended up moving to Canada. So it was a lot of moving around. Stability was not at the forefront of our lives, any of us. And I think that helped us all to become very adaptable. So I'm grateful that I had that experience, because I was able to become very adaptable to different situations. And I learned how to survive, although at the time I wasn't doing the best job at it, because I didn't have the tools to be able to survive. So my survival strategies, tools, mechanisms for coping were drugs, heavily using drugs, from every weekend ecstasy, every single day, multiple times a day, smoking weed to numb, drinking almost every day. And I was only 15 when I started with all of those coping mechanisms. So it was very difficult, but I wouldn't change anything about that. And I live in Houston now. So my family and I moved to Houston when I was, I believe, 19. And at that time, I had already shifted my life. I became a bodybuilder at the time. It didn't last too long. The actual goal of being a bodybuilder and competing, it was really just like, I think what I needed to kind of switch my mind out of the mode that I was in to be able to step into a whole nother version of myself. I stopped drinking when I was bodybuilding. I started eating healthier. I started connecting to my body, which I had zero connection to my body growing up at all. So, man, I'm just so grateful for all of that. And I think that all of that pain and all of those moments that are super difficult and heartbreaking make us into the person that we are now. And I'm still those versions of me deep, deep down. Like my inner child, she's still here. My inner child is with you right now. This is exactly what my inner child would have wanted to do. I started talking way before I was 1. So I was already like, I was having full conversations when I was like 1 already. My mom would tell me stories about just me going into the train with her and talking to some random woman and having like a full-blown conversation when I was 1 years old. 1 years old, is that how you say it? 1 year old. I don't know. So, I mean, I think I really like talking. So it's pretty cool to have a podcast now. I think my younger self would be really proud of me. And just on that note, and first of all, I know this podcast episode is all over the place, and it's okay. My intention with this episode is, first of all, to say hi to you guys again because it's been some time. And second of all, to break out of this like limiting thought I've been having about that I'm not able to just speak just because I don't know all the answers to everything. So this is you joining me in a conversation from friend to friend. And I'm happy to have you here again. But what I was saying, my inner child would be very proud of me, very happy for what I'm doing right now. And I just want to ask you a little question. What would your inner child be so proud of you doing right now? Like maybe you're already doing it. Maybe you're wanting to step into doing it. Maybe you've kind of dabbled in it, but then you haven't fully immersed yourself in it, and that's okay. But what is something that when you were a child, like that was your jam, or like you were known for that? Like you'd walk into a room, like I would walk into a room when I was little and everybody knew like, okay, here comes, I was really hyper. Like I was a super hyperactive child. So everybody knew if Nataly's coming, we're about to have a lot of energy going on in this room. And some family members would literally be like, I can't handle that right now. I'm going in the other room because I was so hyper. So I love that about myself now. It's still a part of me. So what is something for you that you would be so proud of yourself? Your inner child would be so proud of you now for doing, or that you would want to step a little more into. Just throwing that out there. But anyways, on that note, don't even know where we were anymore, but we're going to get there. The limiting belief that I don't know what I'm talking about and that I should stay silent because I don't know enough about this or that, or because I don't know all the answers to everything. And I am stepping into a place where I want to honor that I don't know all the answers and that I know so much more than I used to. And that so much of what I've learned can really help somebody. And to show you as well that just because you're not perfect at something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. The only way to become really good at something is to do it often, every day, as much as possible, multiple times a week, just as much as you can. And the more you do that thing that you think you're not good enough at, and this is an obvious fact what I'm about to say, the more you do that thing, the better you're going to become at it. But the less you do it, the less good you're going to be at it. And it's like the most common sense thing. But again, limiting beliefs are so strong. Like they can really take over your entire psyche. They can take over the way that you show up in life. They can rule whether you do or don't do something, whether you stay in a job that you don't enjoy or whether you break out of it and start doing something you actually love. Limiting beliefs can keep you in a loop of dating people that are not in alignment with you when you know what you actually deserve deep down. The list goes on. Limiting beliefs can keep you from exercising and going to the gym because you think that you're not good enough at working out because somewhere along the line somebody told you that working out had to look a specific way. But what if you just started? Like, what if you just went and started doing something? Let's stay on the topic of working out. What if you've been preventing yourself from actually going to the gym or going to a kickboxing class or Pilates or yoga because you think in your mind that you're just not good at that thing? Like, I'm just not good at yoga. The amount of times that I've heard somebody say that they won't go to a yoga class because they're not good at yoga baffles me. Well, first of all, just talking about yoga in itself, it's not something to be good at. And I think that that's something that makes me sad because I feel like a lot of people stop themselves from going to yoga and like really getting the benefits of the practice, which are infinite. And they're so beyond the poses, the handstands, the headstands. Yoga is about showing up for yourself, finding unity with your breath, your body. It's not about the poses, right? But I think that we all have these beliefs about something, about anything. And instead of going and trying it out and being okay with failing, quote unquote, we literally just don't do it because it feels too big and scary to just put yourself out there and do it out of this fear that we're going to be judged. And that's the main thing. I believe that people stop themselves from doing things because of the judgment that they're going to receive around the thing that they're trying to do. For example, okay, let's go on the example back to the gym one, right? It's not, if you're working out by yourself, you're not thinking about who's watching you in the gym. Is somebody judging me? If you're going to the gym, your limiting belief may be coming from, oh, there's people around me that are watching me and I'm probably doing this wrong. So this is embarrassing. So I'm just not going to come back here. But something I've noticed is we are our own biggest critics. We judge ourselves way, way more intensely than anybody else actually judges us. And you know the little voice in your head that's like replaying itself over and over saying you're not good enough and saying, oh my gosh, everybody's watching you. That voice that's in your head is in somebody else's head that you think is watching you. They're in their own mind thinking, oh my gosh, what if someone's watching me right now? What are they thinking of me? They're too busy in their own mind to even look at what you're doing most of the time. And if they are sitting there judging you, who cares? Like truly. And I know that's easier said than done. Let me take a sip of my matcha. Oh my God, that is so good. It's easier said than done. And I forgot what I was saying because I was sipping on my matcha. Y'all, what's up? This is so fun. I'm really loving doing this with the camera. Like it feels like, I don't know, whoever's going to be listening. Like I feel you. I feel you listening to me. Also, something else I've wanted to get away from with my podcast is taking things so seriously. And I know in some of my episodes, like I'm silly and I say just funny random shit, like, and it's funny. But I think there's times where I audit myself because I'm like, wait, audit or edit? I'm not even going to edit that, what I just said. I edit myself out of fear of judgment. Oh my gosh, she's not going to sound smart enough, or she's not going to sound proper enough. I don't care. Like I've gotten to the point where authenticity is the way that I want to live my life. And that takes so much letting go of this identity that we want others to have about us. And that's been my theme the past few years, really my whole life. Like I've always been I've always been a little rebellious, not gonna lie. Like my mom, if she was sitting here right now, she would be like, yes, like you put me through so much with your rebellious ways. And I love you, mom. If you're listening, I'm sorry. And also, I'm not sorry because it's made me who I am today. And I love that part of me because the rebellious part of me is the part of me that's always wanted to be authentic. It's the part of me that's always like been fighting for that authenticity. And now the only one that's holding me in these like chains of shame and inauthenticity and putting me in this box is actually me. Because when I was younger, I feel like the boxes that were created around my identity were placed there by family members, by the country that I was born in, because in Colombia there's like the judgment goes much deeper just because there is a lot of heavy religious influence, which can often be misleading based on what the actual religion is trying to say from a place of love. The culture, I've noticed, takes it into a place of judgment more than a place of love. So I think those boxes began from very early on in my life when I was younger, where I grew up, and thinking that I had to be a specific way, date a specific person, have a specific job. Then we moved to America, and then every place that I moved to, every place that I lived in, there was a different box. And the box in my mind when I was younger was around like how am I going to fit in? How can I fit into a box? Okay, and I would scan around like where are the people that are fitting in the most? Okay, I'm going to put myself in that box. I'm going to dress like them. I'm going to talk like them. I'm going to act like them. I'm going to play the sports that they play, and I'm going to try to do the things that they do. And it went so far, y'all, that when I was like 13, I lived in Abilene, Texas. And this was a very small town. And there was a lot of money in this town. And all the girls would wear these really expensive True Religion jeans, Miss Me jeans, like these big brands that were like $300 for a pair of jeans. And I wanted to fit in so bad that I bawled my eyes out, begging my parents to buy me a pair of True Religions. And at the time, my parents, like, they would say no, but then I entered such a deep state of depression when I was younger, just from moving so much and that identity crisis of like, who am I? Where do I fit? That they bought me the jeans. And once I had the jeans and I saw that I still wasn't fitting into the box, it was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And I think, and it makes me emotional actually when I think about that part of myself, because it was like I was trying so hard to be somebody that I wasn't because I wanted to be accepted. But life continued to show me that no matter what jeans I bought, no matter what sports I tried to play, that wasn't me. And I wasn't honoring the bright and loving and empathetic and compassionate young girl that I was because I was trying so hard to be like the other girls. So, man, just giving myself a little hug. And if you if you relate to what I'm saying in any way, give yourself a little hug right now. Like your inner child, your younger self deserves it, because I think there's so many things that we do and did as children and when we were younger and still do to this day, where we disrespect our authentic expression so deeply that it's like it's painful when you think about it, because you were designed in this way. Like you literally are a divine being. You were designed in this amazing, magnificent form. Everything about you was designed for you. Like this is your unique blueprint, your personality, the way you speak, your mannerisms. Like there's so many things about you that are unique and beautiful. And when you disrespect yourself by thinking that you need to fit into this other category, into this other box, you are dishonoring this unique blueprint that you have within you. But I think we all have to come to that point within ourselves. And I think that that's why it's important for me to even talk about this. It's like when you start to hear somebody talk about this stuff, it starts to kind of vibrate through your body as a truth for yourself. So if something is coming up for you as I'm speaking about this, first of all, please let me know. I want to know who's listening and I want to know what you're feeling. Like I really want this to become more of like an interactive thing, especially now that you're seeing my face. Talk to me. But all that to say, the theme of my life has been living in a box. And the theme of my life, especially the past few years, has been removing all of the freaking boxes. Like just breaking them, burning them, unleashing myself from these boxes that I have placed myself in or allowed myself to be placed in, so that I can remember who I actually am, like at the core of my being. And the reason it's been this way the past 2 years, one of the biggest reasons, a few of the biggest reasons, which I may not name all of them right now, but one of them was studying engineering. And that's what I went to school for. And, when I started engineering, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Again, I was putting myself in a box of, I don't really know what I want, what path I want to go on in my life. My dad's an engineer. He's making good money, seems to be successful in that way. So let's just go into this path. I'm pretty good at math. Let's try it out, right? So, and I don't even blame myself. Like going back into that time, like I really didn't know any better because I was so lost. Like I was just starting to find myself. Like I said, that was when I started bodybuilding, and it was like finally I was kind of starting to mold myself into a different version of me and removing all the toxins that I had been putting in my body for so long with the drugs and the alcohol, which at the end of the day just cloud us from being able to actually see with clarity what's in front of us and who we are. They dilute our spirit, our personality. Drugs and alcohol and all of these things that we use to numb ourselves are diluting who we are at the core. So once I finally removed that from my being and from my just my life in general, even the friendships that I was around, once I removed that, then it was like, oh, wow, this is who I am now. I guess, I like to work out and this feels good in my body. And then like, I like to take care of myself. But even then I entered another box, which was the box of bodybuilding and being a gym rat and just like fitting this category of counting my meals, my macros, and how much food I'm eating, and what I'm wearing, once again, like all of the little things. And I would see in the gym, like, what are they wearing? And it just became this loop where it's like the repeating cycle of what I was doing my entire life, just in a different way and in a healthier way. I mean, I was in a healthier environment, and I'm very grateful that I stepped into that path. And I have a very good friend to thank for that. Her name's Valentina. She was actually on, I believe, the second episode of Path to Alignment. And you can go back and hear that story where we dive much deeper into the whole bodybuilding story. And she really is the one that got me onto my path to alignment. Path to alignment. Yes. Thank you, Valentina. So stepping into engineering and going kind of into that box. And then I got married. I stepped into another box of what marriage was supposed to look like, who I thought I was supposed to be. Stepped into this role of like housewife for a little bit, but then I was in school full time. I had a job. So it was like, who am I to think I can be a housewife when I have all this stuff to do too? Like, but it was me putting myself in a box of what my culture kind of taught me that women are supposed to do in a relationship. And we'll dive deeper into that in the future. I've also learned this through this podcasting journey and just this journey of the past few years. There are some things that I've wanted to talk about on here for a long time, that I just haven't been ready to speak about, because there's still so much clarity that I'm gaining around a lot of things in my life. And just there's things that I'm holding very precious to my heart, because there's still a lot of healing happening around a lot of those things, not just for me, but for my family, and things that I'm just not ready to speak on. And I think at the beginning of when I started podcasting, there was this part of me that was like, I'm just going to get it all out there, like just going to say it all. But I'm so glad I didn't. There was something in my intuition that was like, not yet. You're not ready yet. You're not ready to talk about that yet. You're still working through it. I think there's something really precious about holding certain things near and dear to your heart before they go out into the world, before they're expressed to hundreds of people or even a group of people. Like, for example, something just like random I'm going to throw out there. If you're going through a breakup, and just being very mindful of, who am I sharing this moment with? If you're going through a big life transformation that is impacting you and maybe the people around you, just again, being very mindful of like, who do I want to actually share this with, that will actually hold this with me without judgment and without their own filter of how they want to see it. So just holding certain things precious and like near and dear to our hearts until we get to a point where we're actually ready to speak on them and share them from an embodied and grounded place, from a place that feels like I've done so much healing around this that I can now speak on it. So in the past few years, there's been certain life changes and things that I've stepped into that I'm not ready to speak about just yet, but I will speak on them, I don't know, when I'm ready. But like I was saying, the one thing that I am ready to just kind of talk about in this moment is the box that I was putting myself in with engineering. And sip of water. Also, I lit some incense and it is like going right up my nose. I'm just gonna turn it off real quick because I can't breathe now. That's probably not healthy. Okay. Anyways, lots of smoke. So I knew that I didn't want to be an engineer pretty much at the very beginning of my engineering journey, but I didn't know what else to do. And it felt for me like the safe route, even though it was extremely difficult. And I don't think at basically any point did I actually feel like safe and stable and secure through the engineering journey. But I'm so glad I did it, because it taught me so much about life, about myself, about the fact that I'm able to do really hard things and not give up. And there's also so many things that I would change about how I actually showed up through my engineering journey, because I didn't give it my all for very long. I was half-assing things. And that goes back to my programming in high school and even before that, where I became a person who was okay with failing all the time. Like, when I say that, I mean I would fail pretty much every test. My classes, I would pass them by cheating when I was in high school. And I would just half-ass everything. It almost became for me like the cool thing to fail. It became the norm that, oh, Nataly failed that test. Yeah, and somebody needs to help Nataly. I got put in school suspension one time for plagiarizing a paper. But I was one of the best writers in my class. Like, I actually was a really good writer. So for me to have gone to the extreme of plagiarizing a paper made no sense because I was actually good at doing that. That's how deep the programming was of like, I'm not even going to try. What's the point? I was really, my mentality through my young years was, what's the point of anything? We're going to move anyway. What's the point of anything? All of this is going to be taken away from me anyway. It was this like victim mindset for so long. And again, I say this with like all the love in the world for my younger self because I empathize with her so much. But I became so okay with failing that even when I entered college, I was still in that programming for a very long time. This thought in my mind that I just wasn't good enough. That even if I try to pass this test, even if I study for this class, I'm not going to pass it, not going to be good enough. So I'm going to hang out with the people that really know what they're doing so that they can help me. And that belief, that paradigm about myself ran my life through pretty much all of college up until the very last year of engineering, where at that point I was much deeper into my yoga journey. And my gosh, I thank my yoga journey so much because once I started meditating, it helped me concentrate in a way that I had never been able to focus in my entire life. It literally changed my life, being able to meditate, sit still, and observe my thoughts. Like when I tell you, once I started meditating, I could actually sit down for more than 20 minutes and study and focus on what I was doing and understand and absorb the material. That was the first time in my life I had ever experienced that feeling, ever, as far as I can remember. Like when I can recall being able to do that was when I was living in Colombia when I was young, like 6, 7, up until I was 8 when we moved. I was one of the best students in my class when I was little in Colombia. And then when we moved, it's like it destabilized me all over the place. And then my grades and everything kind of started going down. But this just goes to show how deep, first of all, a limiting thought can become ingrained in our mind. My limiting thought of I'm not good enough to even pass anything, so I'm not even going to really study fully because I'm going to fail anyways. So that limiting belief was running so deep. But then also how much we can shift our lives in an actually a very short period of time by simply changing our habits and beginning to understand how our minds work. Like how our minds work, where there's all this internal dialogue that is just all the time running the show. It's just in and out, thoughts in and out. And you have to be the one to be like, stop. I'm observing you. I'm watching you. I'm not becoming you. This shifted my entire reality, my consciousness, everything about me. So the last year of engineering, I gave it my all. Like I actually was realizing that, oh, if I actually don't study with a group of people, sit down by myself, put on some binaural beats, take a few deep breaths, maybe even meditate before I sit down and study, I can actually learn so much. And I was starting to become the person that was explaining things to others. I cannot tell you how incredible this felt in my body because I had never been the one to sit here and explain something to somebody else especially when it had to do with school. Like when it had to do with like life, that was always me. Like I was always the friend that people would come to when I was young for advice, or if they were going through a breakup and they needed like a shoulder to cry on and someone to like console them, that was me. That I was always that. But when it came to anything to do with school, no. Like you wouldn't come to me. But there was something so incredibly validating that I actually needed. I needed that. I needed to be able to see that I was capable of more so that I could start doing more with my life. So thank God for meditation and for yoga and all these amazing disciplines and tools that saved me. And man, I got off track, but I'm loving the convo. I hope you're liking it too. This is all gonna circle back to the boxes situation, living in a box. But basically, it's actually all related to living in a box, because the box that I was in for the longest time was nobody can come to me for questions and answers. Like, I don't know anything. I'm just here. I'm just trying to make it here. I'm just trying to survive. And I went from that box to understanding, like, actually, no, I have just as much knowledge as everybody else here. There's actually nothing different about me that this person has or doesn't have. We both have a brain. We're both completely capable of understanding things. I just need to sit down and study a little bit different from this person. But getting to that understanding allowed me to like deconstruct this box that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart enough. Man, what a liberating feeling to go through. Whew. So, come to the last semester of engineering, I'm getting job offers for a pretty big company. They wanted to move me in the middle of nowhere. And I was kind of in a place where I already knew life coaching was what I wanted to do. I was teaching yoga for big music festivals. I was building my community with yoga and building a little tribe. And I was seeing all of these things flourishing around me, blossoming. Like, if you could think of my life in that moment outside of school, it felt like spring. It was like, wow, like everything around me feels like it's coming to fruition. All of the stuff that I've been doing the past few years has become my passions and has become something that could actually become something greater than just like a hobby. And I'm very grateful for my partner, because she was able to see in me what I wasn't ready to see in myself, which was, you can graduate and you can do the complete opposite of what you think that you're supposed to do, of what your family wants you to do, of what society has told you to do. You can be a full-time coach. You can be a podcaster. You can be all of those things. You don't have to limit yourself. And I needed to not only hear that from someone whom I loved and who I still love and who loves me, but someone that was an actual representation of what they were telling me to do. And she is that. My partner is like limitless, probably one of the most limitless people I've ever met. And that for me was an example of what I was capable of doing too. And I think that's what so many of us are missing, to be able to get out of these boxes that we built for ourselves, is to be able to see an example of what we are striving to be more like. To actually, and not just seeing an example on like Instagram, some influencer, someone that you don't even know, but from someone that's like close to you, like a close friend, a close family member. Like for me, the limiting thought about what I was able to do with my life came from obviously being from South America, and like you come to America and this is the land of the dreams. Like this is the land of the free. This is where you make your life and dreams come true. And the greatest dream, as far as like the paradigms go with Latin American families, is for their child to become a doctor, engineer, like any of those titles that feel like you're somebody. And there was this really big part of me that was like, I can't disappoint my parents. I can't disappoint my parents. I have to do this for them. I have to graduate and get this job, even if I don't want it, even if there's all these passions. I have to do it for them, because my family wasn't in a place yet to accept a lot of things about me. And one of the main things was like they were not ready to accept that I could make a living being a yoga teacher, a life coach. To them, those are foreign concepts. And they're also things that they don't really believe in because their religion doesn't allow them to think that yoga is a good thing. So there was so many moving factors around who I could become. And there was the part of me that was like, I want to please my family. They've done so much for me. I need to show them that it was all worth it. And then there's this greater part of me that was like, but they want to see you happy at the end of the day. And they're not going to understand right now, but stay consistent and do what you actually want to do. They're going to be disappointed at first, and you have to be okay. You have to be okay with others being disappointed in your choices. Because ultimately, this is your life. It's not theirs. And yes, they're a part of your life. But if you continue to live your life based on if others are going to be disappointed or proud of you, then you're living life for somebody else. And they're going to be gone one day. Like truth of the matter is, we're all going to leave these human bodies one day. And when they leave this human experience, will not be there to say, good job, or we're disappointed in you. Your life review ends up coming from you. From what you did in this life, who you served, how many people you actually impacted in the world. And if you lived life according to you or according to others. And I think that everyone has their own truths about what life is supposed to be like. But the truths that everyone has are based on what keeps them safe. Like what has kept this person safe, whether it's their religious views, their views around what job you're supposed to have, their views around what family's supposed to look like, their views around how much money you should or shouldn't make, or their idea of money. So these views that everyone kind of has of their own are their own almost like limiting views based on what's kept them safe. But what's kept them safe doesn't necessarily mean that it is meant for you. And what's kept them safe can also just be the boxes that they've built around themselves. Who's to say that you release that box or that idea of safety, choose to live life in a different way, and actually find that there's safety in that too? Like, you see all the types of people there are in this world. There's people that are living with all the money in the world and still don't feel safe in their bodies, in their lives, don't feel loved, don't feel happy. There's people that are living in a trailer and they feel safe and they feel happy. Like, our ideas around what creates safety, happiness, joy, stability can often be based off of somebody else's paradigm around what safety, stability, etc. means. So I think the topic of this episode is what I've come to realize is for you to see, where are you putting yourself in boxes? Like, where in your life are you placing yourself inside of this box that is actually limiting you? Because when you think of a box, like it is limiting, like you have to break out of it to be able to see beyond it. But sometimes when we're in this little box, it feels cozy and it feels safe and it feels familiar. And it's like you can see all of the corners and you can see all of the walls. And it's like, okay, we're safe here. Nobody can get us here. Everything's fine. But something about a box is it can get pretty dark in there and it can get pretty lonely. And eventually it can get very exhausting to live in a box. Like if you can think and reflect back on the pandemic when we were all locked in our spaces. Maybe at first it was like, oof, this is nice. Like I get to be out of work and I get to not be at school and blah blah blah, like all these things that came with it. But then after like, okay, 6 months, a year, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to get out of this box. Like I'm ready to unleash myself. And something I noticed after the pandemic is people are so eager to like be outside way more than before because they were locked up in their places for so long. So how are you keeping yourself locked up? Where are you keeping yourself locked up? And the true question is, are you ready to actually unleash yourself from those boxes? Because one thing is having the idea of like, I don't want to live like this anymore, but then actually executing it. Like that's the scariest part, is literally like breaking out of it. Because once you break out of it, it's the unknown. It's almost like a free-for-all. But there's something, let me tell you a secret, okay? There is something so extremely magnificent that happens when you get out of that box. You enter a space where you can allow divine intervention to take place. Like things that you never would have even imagined possible in your life actually start to happen. And when you live in that box, life can get pretty predictable. Like, of course, life keeps on lifing. Like, life is going to keep throwing things at you. But there's those constants, right? Certain constants, which are good. It's good to have certain constants in our life. But when you get out of that box, those constants that were keeping you safe, or you think safe and stable and secure, are no longer there. So what happens there is you have to literally surrender and open yourself up to any possibility, like literally any possibility. Everything in life becomes a synchronicity. And when you start to tune into the synchronicities that you think are coincidences, you start to realize the universe is literally placing things in your path for you because you made a brave choice to step out of the box. So, I think that was my story today. And I'm very grateful that you tuned in, and I'm so excited to be having these episodes now in this way, stepping out of my own box now, and stepping out of the box of thinking that I'm not able to express myself, and that thinking that my words aren't what somebody needs to hear. And, you know, it's silly, these thoughts that we place on ourselves. Because when I listen to podcasts, I listen to a range of podcasts. Like some of them will be about extraterrestrial beings. The majority of them actually are like about extraterrestrial beings. Others will be about um, ancient history or religion, or like the Egyptians and the Mayans and how they built the pyramids and the ruins. And some of them will literally just be like a random podcast of people talking just like about life, just literally about their travels, something like random. And I don't sit here thinking to myself, like, what they're saying isn't useful. But we place these random thoughts on ourselves that are like, oh, these people are going to think this of me, or they're not going to find this useful. Somebody will find it very useful. Let me tell you that. And I mean this with anything, like literally anything in life. There are billions of people on this planet. I can guarantee you that something that you have to offer will be received by at least one person, like literally at least one person in this world. And it may be your mom, maybe your dad. One person will receive it though. And they will receive it with lots of love. But actually, I'm just kidding. Like, I actually really do believe this. Like, we are placed here as catalysts to express in our own ways. For me right now, it's through my voice, like through actually talking and my soul and my heart. And for others, it's through music, through singing, or through playing instruments. And people go like, and there's going to be people that, for example, would love to go to a jazz show. And there's people who really don't want to go to a jazz show. But that's the beauty of life, that you're not going to please everybody with whatever you have to offer to the world. But one thing I can guarantee you, if you give that offer, you're 100%, like your heart and soul, you are going to attract a crowd of people. You're going to attract a tribe that actually wants to be there for it. Because it's not even about what you are giving, it's about how you're giving it. Are you giving it from a place of love? Are you giving it from a place of servitude, from a place of abundance? Or are you giving it from a place of like wanting something out of people? That energy is felt. So even if you're not the best singer, the best DJ, the best artist, the best podcaster, if you're doing it from the heart and from the soul, that's what matters. Because people want to feel. And whenever you allow yourself to feel through your craft, through your offering, through your service, you are literally a living, walking, and breathing invitation for others to also feel, to also express. Because we're constantly looking at others and trying to find ourselves in them. We're reflections of each other. If you're like 100% relating to what I'm saying right now, it's because there's a very big part of you that literally is a reflection of my soul. And that's why you are here for it. And if you're listening and you're like, I don't relate to anything she's saying, that's okay. That means we're not fully reflections of each other. But no matter what, we are one. We come from one source, one light, one love, and I truly believe that. So your expression may call in people who resonate with that expression. My expression will call in people who resonate with my expression. And we're all really saying and expressing the same things when it comes from the heart and the soul. We're all just expressing it in a different way. Let that land. Anyways, this went from me being blocked and not knowing what to talk about and thinking that it was going to be like a quick little, hi, how are you guys? Good to see you. Yeah, my name's Nataly. Hi. To like a full-blown 1-hour episode. So, thank you so much for listening. And I hope that this finds you well. Please let me know if you resonated with this episode. I would love to hear it. Let me know if there's anything that you would like me to speak about. whether it's something about my own personal life or you have a question about anything, whether it has to do with trauma, relationships, work, your dreams, manifesting, anything at all, send me a message on Instagram at Hungry Yogi and let me know how this landed for you. And I love you. Stay on that path to alignment. One more thing I wanted to say about path to alignment, which I'll probably talk about more in another episode, is that we are all on a path to alignment. And even those that seem to be the most aligned, they're still on their own path. So when I came up with the name for this show, it was like a download because I was like, should I call it Aligned? I'm like, no, path to alignment. It's a path and it's never ending. We're always realigning. That's the beauty of life, that it's like one day you're out of alignment and then you try to find a way to recalibrate, realign so that your path can be smooth again. But the path is constantly presented with little bumps in the road and bad weather. I'm not even going to say bad, but storms and things that just make the path a little bit hazy and blurry and hard to navigate. So it's a never-ending path and we're all finding it. And the intention of this podcast is to find it together and is to really create a little community for that. So thank you for being a part of this path to alignment. And thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Many more episodes to come. I'm very excited for this new path. And I want to share with you all, any women that are on the call right now, I have a new offering, and it is a free women's healing circle, a group coaching container where I take in women into a Zoom call. So it's totally virtual. You can join from anywhere in the world. And I coach you through anything that you're going through in your life, alongside an amazing group of women who are also on their path to alignment. Something so beautiful about group coaching is there are so many of us that are going through very similar experiences. And even if it's not the same thing, the same story, because it's never the same exact story, it's very similar emotions that come up. So if somebody is going through losing a loved one and somebody's going through a really intense breakup, divorce, emotions of grief, sadness, anger are all going to come up. So in these calls, we really just talk about those emotions that are coming up for each individual person. And even if you don't get coached on the call, you get coached simply by being on the call and listening to somebody else getting coached. So this is a really cool offering that I've started doing every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central. And I have an application process just to make sure that we're in alignment and that you're joining the call for the reasons of personal development, and that you're joining the call in a way that's going to be respectful and safe for every individual that's in the call. Everyone that's in the call is sharing very vulnerable and deep life experiences that they're currently going through. So my main priority is keeping the container very safe and open to people who are really, really wanting to be there. So if this sounds like something you'd like to be a part of, I'll be leaving the link in the description. It's also on my Instagram at Hungry Yogi, in the link in my bio, and you can ask me any questions that you have about it. But yeah, I'm very excited. Right now, this is a free offering, and at the moment, I am in the process of creating a really amazing program. It's going to be more customized with more accountability. We'll be setting goals and just really creating that sense of community. So if community is something that you are looking for in your life right now, from wherever you are in the world, please, please apply so that you can join these free weekly calls. And I hope to meet you and to see you there. Well, this has been the longest goodbye ever. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah.